welcome to the Core. I'm Dale Allen, and I'm so pleased to introduce Debbie Fay, who is my friend and founder of Bespeak Presentation Solutions. And today we're going to talk about how to optimize your presentation ability. We all need to be able to communicate what's important to us, whether that's through work or a creative endeavor, and Debbie is the expert. Welcome, Debbie.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
I know that you've been working with Bespeak. You founded your company how many years ago?
It'll be 15 years this August.
So you've worked with quite a few people.
Yes, in all different industries, vocations, ages, experience levels, the width and breadth, you name it.
So all are welcome to come to you to get the assistance that they need.
Absolutely.
In the past, anybody doing a presentation would have been doing it, well, for the most part, live in front of a podium, perhaps, maybe with some slides behind them. But now we're all in these little boxes that we're in on Zoom or Teams. And you're working with people under these conditions, yes?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, interestingly, about the first year or two when I started working, because I got really lucky and was referred to clients by a big management consultancy, I was working with people all over the world, and I was unable to fly to where they were or they to come where I was. And so we were working together at that time on Skype. If you remember Skype.
Yes.
It still exists, but you don't hear people on it really. So I was super familiar with working with people on these kinds of platforms and presenting via these kinds of platforms. But certainly once the pandemic hit and all of us were working from home, then not only was I working with people via Zoom and WebEx and Google Hangouts, but also was presenting myself weekly on this same platform. So I want to be clear, this is my office and you and I are chatting right now, but were I to be presenting, I have a Zoom studio downstairs in my kitchen. And what might be great is if you'd like, you can show this short video that I created about what's key to keep in mind as far as how to look your best on Zoom or any remote platform.
That's perfect. We can do that right now. And to the video.
Hi, Debbie Fay here with easy tips on nailing your next Zoom presentation. First of all, don't stress about your background, about the scene behind you. Make sure it's neat and not distracting. Second of all, be sure that you're looking at the camera and that the camera is at eye level. You don't want the camera to be way below your eye or way above. Prop it up on some books, some blocks, whatever you've got around. I recommend standing when you're presenting so you can take full advantage of your energy and make it easier to speak from your diaphragm. And lastly, please don't read. I know you may think that you want to write down what you're going to say so it'll be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. It's just going to sound like you're reading. And reading isn't compelling. Reading isn't engaging. Reading sounds like reading, not like talking. So remember, your background, don't stress about it. It should be maybe interesting, not distracting, always neat. Stand when you're presenting so you can take advantage of your energy and your diaphragm. Make sure you're looking at the camera and that the camera is at eye level. And whatever you do, don't read. Do these things and you'll be on your way to nailing your next presentation.
So Debbie, as a communications expert, as a presentation solutions expert, what are some of the problems that people come to you with? And what are some of the solutions that you offer?
So it's such a great question. 90% of the time, Dale, people come to me, whether they're just starting out or or they're CFOs or COOs of big companies. They come to me because they are under the mistaken impression that they are bad presenters and that they need to improve their delivery. And what I have found in almost 15 years of this work and having helped hundreds of people is that it is not the delivery, it is truly about the content. And typically, the problem is that the presenter has built, which I'm putting in air quotes, because often it's really not even been constructed, this presentation. What people all too often do is copy and paste slides or graphics coupled with bullet points into a PowerPoint deck. And then they get up in front of a real live audience, be it remotely or live and in person, and they give this presentation for the very first time that they have never rehearsed, that they have never really taken a good hard look at after they copied and pasted all this stuff into this presentation deck. So can you imagine, just imagine that you've brainstormed all these ideas and you put it on this big sheet of paper. And then maybe you looked at the big sheet of paper a couple times, maybe you glanced at it a couple times, and then with, let's just say, the big sheet of paper in back of you, you got up in front of an audience live and in person or on Zoom, and you started presenting it. And you were hearing these words come out of your mouth for the very first time. Now, you are a professional presenter. And so I know you know that that would never have a good outcome, which it doesn't, right? It doesn't. It's virtually impossible for that to have a good outcome. And so these poor presenters are going away from that experience under the mistaken impression that it's them, that it was their delivery that was poor. Well, of course their delivery was poor because they never got the content built correctly. And they never knew that it wasn't built correctly because they never went through it out loud. So when I work with presenters, of course we brainstorm ideas, but then we edit out the stuff that doesn't belong. And then I build the slide deck, not only so that it's the outline part is right, but also so that the visual aspect of it is truly a visual aid for the audience.
Great.
Because that's why PowerPoint was, meant to work, right? As a visual aid for the audience, not as speaker notes for the presenter.
Okay. So first of all, the very, very good news came at the very start of your discussion here, which is that people come into you with the mistaken belief that they aren't good presenters. And isn't that good to know from a 15-year seasoned professional that helps people with presentations? So listener, you are likely a whole lot more skilled of a presenter than you ever thought you were. You just need the right tools. Secondly,
totally.
You brought up an important point about how rehearsal is really important. So understanding that putting together a PowerPoint presentation is one thing, that's creating a visual thing, but that presenting is another. Indeed, I am a professional. I am a professional presenter. And I rehearse. I always rehearse because I need to, as you pointed out, have heard those words coming out of my mouth before. I need to be really familiar with what's going to happen. It increases my comfort level and it helps me find the strength in what I'm presenting. The other piece of good news is that there is help in terms of creating the right slides, not as the thing that's the whole content of the presentation, but that the slides are just for the audience to support the speaker. Please continue, Debbie. Great start.
And to support the message as well. So ideally, and science tells us this, that the way our brains, our working memory is designed to work is to hear the presenter while we see an image, which can be a chart, a graph, a photograph. It can be icons with labels. It can be some directional kind of thing, like a flow chart. There's all different kinds of visuals. What we know about our brains and the way they love to work is that our brains love to hear a presenter talk and then see things that help us understand what the presenter is saying. Images, visual things that maybe have labels but are not sentences, are not phrases. That's what we're hearing. And what we know about our working memory is that we cannot read and listen at the same time.
That's an important point. So, understanding that with some coaching and some work with a professional such as you, it's learning how to design those slides so that they're not competing with your presentation because you're not putting words up there. I'm intrigued that you work with your clients and that you will build the slides that will be most optimal for them.
So the other part of this that is great for my clients is that it's really painless because I'm the person doing the work. However, I'm doing the work listening intently to them. The first thing we do is talk about who the intended audience is and what my presenter's goal is for that presentation, for that audience or those audiences. And then we start talking. They talk. It really is truly a brainstorm the first time, with me then editing out the irrelevant parts, the redundant parts, the third rails. People sometimes think that it's okay to talk about things in their presentation that it's not okay to talk about.
A third rail, you called it.
Yes, it's known as a third rail, the thing that the electricity is coming from for the train, for the subway car. It's a thing that if you touch it, it will hurt you. It will electrocute you. So we don't want to electrocute either the presenter, the presentation, or the audience. None of those three. Things like people will think it's okay to talk about politics, for example, which unless you're giving a political speech, it's not okay to talk about. Years ago, when Obamacare was up for consideration and first being rolled out, and frankly, even today, that's not something that you can talk about unless you are giving a presentation about healthcare and it's a factual part of your presentation. So there are things that you can't talk about in a presentation, and I am keenly aware of those.
You know what the rules are.
Yes.
So you can look for those red flags, those third rails, and coach your clients to eliminate them, avoid them.
Exactly. And also, Dale, on the positive side, I listen for all the wonderful organic phrases that my clients use. And I will say to them, oh, that's terrific. That's a great way to talk about that. I want you to remember to say that. And I will have written it down. I take copious notes so that it's not just that I'm listening for the things that can, to use the same analogy of train travel, that will derail their presentation. I'm also giving a keen ear to the things that are wonderful, that they naturally use in their own speech to talk about their subject matter.
That's another bit of good news, because once again, so many people are afraid of public speaking. And there's the joke, and I know it came up in a Seinfeld episode, a person is more afraid of public speaking than they are of death, right? So pretty funny, but also pretty true. And there are people that I am very near and dear to, super, super bright, so much to share, and so afraid of public speaking. So you just brought up another piece of good news. People in their natural way of speaking offer gems. There are certain strengths that we all innately have when we're talking about something that we think is important. So just listener, know that coming into this, you have more going for you than you probably realized. And Debbie Fay is the kind of professional person who can grab those and note those and highlight them and make sure that you stand on those strengths. That's a big deal.
Exactly. And bring those out because, just as you're unaware of maybe some things that you're doing that can be diminishing the power of your message, you're also often not aware of the terrific things that you're saying that will empower your message, that enhance your message. So another thing we will do is once we've got the outline of the presentation figured out, then particularly if it's a persuasive presentation, which most presentations are, I'll ask for stories, for what we refer to as proof that you can do the thing or that the thing works that you're talking about or will work. Odds are you're confident it will work because it's worked before. And maybe it hasn't, it's such a new thing, a new idea, a new product or service for you. You may not have that proof yourself, but we put our heads together and we know that it maybe has been used in another company, in another country. There is an analogy for this thing that has been used before. So one way or another, the two of us come up with the stories that are either yours or they are a partner of yours or they belong to someone else, but we attribute it to that other person. We never lie. We never attribute something to us that is not ours because the audience doesn't really care. They just want to know that it's going to work.
Indeed. I agree with you completely as a professional speaker that stories work, stories matter. People can tune in when it becomes a narrative like that. It engages, I think, a person's imagination in the most helpful way because you are giving them a story. And then to your point, it's a story about the success of whatever it is that you are trying to convey, whether it's a product, a solution, whatever it is that you're trying to share. So,
and people remember stories, Dale, right? You always remember the stories. So even if you're interviewing for a job, which I do interview prep for people because an interview is a presentation about yourself to one person or a small group of people. Inevitably, we will look at the skills and abilities required of this job that the person is interviewing for. And I will say, okay, tell me a story about when you did that thing. And then we will make sure that all the parts of the story are there and only the parts of the story that need to be there. Because again, stories resonate, stories prove things, and stories are easily retold.
that's a great point. And even the thought about rehearsing how to interview with a professional, because when it really matters, it's important to have a rehearsed, something that you're familiar with, so that it decreases your nerves and your stress, so that you've kind of warmed up and you've practiced with a professional before you go on to that interview. And I love that you're encouraging people to tell the story of their past experience and their successes.
Of
Very
course, it's
cool.
and you're exactly right. You and Zoom or whatever remote platform you're using has made it so easy. Just so easy. There's no excuse for not practicing your presentation, your interview. You should, to your point, when someone asks you, and really you look at a job description, at least I do, and I know the questions that are most likely to be asked. You can suss out the things that are going to be critical to this position.
You
And
can.
I can.
Not everybody can. That's a skill.
Yeah, that could be true. And then I ask, you'll love this because we know each other from theater. I will play the role of the interviewer, and I'm talking about playing the role. So it truly is a practice because I'm acting as though I am the interviewer. I think the thing that you and I know is practice is key. It is key. And let me just say, as far as practicing presentations, this is really important. When you're practicing your presentation, if you are using slides, PowerPoint slides, you have to practice with your slides in slideshow mode. You can't think that you're practicing when you're not in slideshow and you're kind of clicking through when you can see on the side what the next slides are. Because especially in Zoom, it's very difficult to have your presentation in presenter mode, because presenter mode allowed you to see what was going to happen the next time you clicked. You could see it as the presenter, but your audience didn't see it on the screen. In Zoom, you're only seeing what your audience is seeing. So you have to know what's going to happen the next time you click. And to do that, you have to practice in slideshow mode. So you get used to clicking and talking and clicking and talking.
Makes complete sense. And it is interesting how the people who do this all the time recognize the value of rehearsal. I think an important point is that in the rehearsing, it doesn't mean that you end up in an interview situation with a sort of a canned or, rehearsed thing that you're doing. It's just that in and of yourself, you've exercised the muscles. You've become this well-oiled machine so that when it comes time to answer, you're spontaneously answering, but these concepts and thoughts and the sentences come more easily because you rehearsed. So rehearsing doesn't mean here is my canned presentation. It just means that, in your quiver, the arrows are ready and you know what to do and you know what to say.
Exactly. That's I'm so glad you made that point, because truly, once you have all the pieces in place, you really only need to rehearse maybe 3 times so that you have that familiarity. In an interview, they ask you the question, you're going to be nervous. It's an interview, but you've been through the answers a few times and you're familiar with what you're going to say. It's going to come out differently every time. My presentations come out differently every time. But as I click and talk, I know what the point is that I want to make, what the story is that I want to tell. And that is the key. You're not, I'm laughing, but it's not funny. You're not being surprised by your own presentation.
Right.
Or in an interview, you're really not going to be surprised by the question the interviewer is asking you.
You also brought up the word nerves. You said you'll be nervous. And as a professional presenter, even with something that I had presented many, many times, each time before I would walk out on stage into sometimes very large audiences and sometimes not as large, but every single time I would feel what could be called stage fright or nerves. And it's a real feeling. It happens right about in the center. Throat gets a little dry, throat gets a little closed, a lot of activity right in the center. And it feels, very constricting, and it would be called stage fright. I will say this, that with practice, we get used to how that feels. It's like, oh, well, there's that feeling, tightening in the stomach. I can feel a little tightness here. And I now know that that's like the energy is getting wound up, and I can trust, because I've done some rehearsing, I can trust that once I get underway, what was once called stage fright is this bound up energy that will release and support me. So it gives me the energy I need to bring out what's important to me and what it is I want to say. So there's hope. If you feel like you are riddled with stage fright, it's the exact same thing that will come to serve you. Do you agree with that, Debbie?
I do. There is a professor at UC Davis out in California, Michael Motley, who's written extensively and researched about nerves and public speaking. And he measures it, Dale, by heart rate, because that's an empirical measurement. And what he says is, and then I'm going to tie it to what you said. What he says is there are these 3 stages that happen, 2 of them just before we're about to speak, and the third one happens about the first 30 seconds we are speaking, and he names them one of them is audience confrontation. Of course, that sounds terrible, but I think part of it is the age old the amygdala in our brain seeing eyes looking at us and taking 30 seconds to determine, no, I'm not in danger here. No one is pointing a weapon at me. No one has ill intent toward me. That's really, I think, what that was meant in our ancient, right, in our ancient protective part of our brain to do. Unfortunately, for some nervous speakers, they focus on the physiological things that are happening in the lead up to and in those first 30 seconds. To your point, what they should be doing, and they can do once they hear us talking about this, is realize that that is a completely normal physiological reaction, and left to its own devices, our body's heart rates are going to go to a natural level, because our brains will tell ourselves, one part of our brain is going to tell another part of our brain, you're okay, not in any danger. And then your heart rate's going to go to a normal level. Now, it's not going to go to the level that it would be were we sitting on the couch watching TV and eating potato chips, because we don't want our heart rate to go to that level. We're presenting. We want to, as you say, tap into that awesome energy that is connected to our enthusiasm about our message and getting that message across to our audience. That's an awesome thing. And the only reason that that energy will be misdirected is if we are caught up in our own heads saying to ourselves, I'm so nervous. I'm so nervous. Now I'm sweating. They can see me sweating. Now I'm shaking. Oh my gosh, that's all wrong pronoun. I, me, wrong focus. Right? Your focus should always be on getting your message across to your audience. And as long as we're doing that, our bodies are going to do what they were meant to do. Heart rate goes down, energy is there, optimal physiological state to deliver this well-crafted, rehearsed, not over rehearsed so that we're familiar message.
Yes.
And we're all good. And by the way, the other thing that we know is that right now, just people watching this and listening to what you and I are saying, their minds are now connected to, have now heard the truth about what's happening in their brains and their bodies. So let your body do what it's going to do, and it's going to calm down, and you stay focused on your message and getting it across to your audience.
Agreed. One of the things I know about almost everybody I know, people want to help others and people want to contribute. And keeping in mind that whatever it is that you're presenting about, it's something that's going to help the people to whom you are presenting. It's a gift that you're giving them. You know that the product you're selling, the solution that you're selling, or your skill sets in an interview, you're going to help that person. So suddenly it becomes about them. And you are the channel for the information. You are the one that's going to really assist them. And that just really helps. Sometimes I've taken it so far to where I'll think, there's someone particularly in this audience that really needs to hear this. Sometimes I'll just consider that the whole audience, needs to hear this particular message. It's a great solution. It's going to change their lives. I've gone so far as to imagine someone in my audience, say at a trade show, who came all the way out to the trade show, got on a plane, got out there. They need to learn about this solution because they've got to go back to their company with this information so that they can do well in their job, so that they can pay their mortgage, so that they can go to their son's baseball game because their ducks are in a row. I mean, it's amazing if you just get out of your own head and realize, I really want to help that guy who flew out here. I really want to help him with this solution because it's going to make his job better. And once we do that, it just makes it so much easier. We can just relax. We're helping.
I could not agree more. And I found in my years of doing this, and I have to say, particularly with women, not that men don't feel this way, but women are built this way. With women who are reticent presenters or fearful of presenting, as soon as I get across to them, this is a really important message that you're getting across. These people need this message. All their thought about themselves goes away. And the focus really becomes about the message and making sure that it gets across to the audience, which, as you said, is exactly right. That's why you're there. Presentations are not performances, they are communications. And your audience does not think of itself as a group. They are individuals. They hear as individuals. They are listening as an individual. They feel that you are communicating with them. There's another misconception that people have, that they have to be performers. And the really scary part about that is, in a performance, when you're acting, as you and I have both done, your director can say, now I want you to walk in with your hands on your hips, really strutting your stuff. And you're an actor and you follow what your director says and you're going to do it. You're at least going to try it. You're going to see if it works, right? That's not a presentation. A presentation, no coach, in my humble opinion, should ever be putting gestures on you. That's a big mistake, because the first thing your audience is trying to figure out about you is how much they're going to trust what's coming out of your mouth. And they can only trust you if they deem you to be authentic. And you can only be authentic if you are being yourself.
So well said. I literally got chills when you said no director should be putting gestures on you. That literally gave me chills, because it's taking the person outside of their authenticity. And you are right. The first thing an audience wants to know is who are you and can I trust you? And since you know in your heart of hearts that the answer is yes, be yourself.
Exactly. Exactly. So if you're someone who does not gesture when you talk in animated conversations with friends, then please do not gesture when you are presenting. You can be completely, totally effective as a speaker, mesmerizing as a speaker with your hands folded in front of you. Now, if you are someone who gestures in animated conversation with friends, then you want to be gesturing when you're presenting. Because if you clasp your hands in front of you, pretty soon your elbows are going to be doing this, because you're going to be desperate to be using your hands to talk, and they're being held captive by one another. So truly, you just have to do you.
Yeah, definitely. There are so many ways that you can help people. And I really like that you can help people no matter where they are in the world, because of this Zoom platform that we're all so used to. So whether it's a professional presentation, an interview, how can you best sell your product? We all need to communicate what it is that's important to us. It's required. It's the name of the game. How will anybody ever know unless we're able to present and talk about it? And it sounds to me, without question, that when somebody comes to you, there will be a before and after, and there will initially be a sense of an increase in confidence, which we can all use around public speaking. And then all of the particular skills, right down to the nitty gritty, each item, you're taking the client, your clients through, so that they can bring forth the best presentation that they can, and their best self, which anybody deserves.
Yeah.
Debbie, any last thoughts you want to share?
Just two. Number one, I want to say it is been and continues to be the joy of my life, aside from my family and our dog, I always say. But truly, I've been doing this for almost 15 years, and I never ever lose the thrill of talking to one of my presenters after they've given a presentation and they have just nailed it. And from getting standing ovations and 500 people shaking this presenter's hand afterward, or somebody writing me that a board voted unanimously for the proposal that he presented, or a woman who had a terrible fear of public speaking who went out and gave a presentation at a national conference on the other side of the country, and she had been so filled with fear and went out and gave this presentation and not only succeeded in it, but loved doing it. It's been truly the honor of my adult life to be able to do this work and see what the outcomes are for the presenters with whom I work.
You can't ask for more around work and career
Yeah.
than to love it and
Yeah.
feel that passion around it, and know that you're doing good, that you're helping people. Once again, it just will always come down to that. You're
Yeah,
coming from
it's
your
true.
heart's place, and you have a happy person on the other end because they made it. They did what they wanted to do, and maybe even surprise themselves. So I thank you so very much.
Thank
I will make
you.
sure to have all of Debbie's contact information, and I truly encourage you to get in touch with her. Thank you so much, Debbie Fay.
Thank you for having me. This has been great.